The restaurants you love, the food you crave, and the people that make it all happen. We tell their stories on the Paper Trails podcast with Albemarle Paper Supply.
What's going on, guys? How are you? I am Nick Calgary-Mitros, host of the Paper Trails podcast, and we are back, episode 14, season 2, and I'm with Kyle at Vaulted Oak Brewing, and so super pumped. This is, what area of Charlotte are we at?
So technically Echo Hills, Oakhurst.
Okay.
Kind of just East Charlotte, right outside
East Charlotte, and so absolutely phenomenal place. It's my first time here, pulled up, fell in love with the building, did a little tour. We just cut a little behind the scenes clip of the brewing process right behind us, if you can kind of see in the picture. Very excited to learn about one of the newest breweries.
Yeah.
Here in Charlotte. They just opened up probably 60, 90 days ago. But a long history of the food industry, the beverage industry, definitely know what they're doing. And if you haven't stopped by their location, definitely do that. And so excited to have Kyle, one of the owners here. And so, brother, let's talk about brewing. Let's talk about how did this even come about? Let's dive into a little bit, maybe your background. Where are you from? You from this area? Give us some context.
Yeah, so I grew up in Winston-Salem,
okay.
North Carolina. Came down here 2003, go to UNC Charlotte, and graduated 2008.
Yep.
Just never left. And as a lot of people know, 2008 was probably the worst time to try to graduate and get a job.
Both of us graduated the same year, so both of us know that.
So yeah, just kind of fell into the restaurant industry. In the meantime, I was trying to find a real job,
yep.
and found a place called Lebowski's Neighborhood Grill over on East Boulevard
yep.
in Dilworth, and just loved it and never really left it, until about 11 years later, until I opened this place up.
Nice. So you pause for a second. So you've seen the growth of Charlotte, especially in the food and beverage scene. It's changed a lot.
Yeah.
I know we've serviced Charlotte as far as restaurants, maybe the last 5 or 6 years, and I know since we've been here.
Yeah.
What are some of those things that you've noticed about the city, the food scene? Areas. South End.
Yeah.
15 years ago, brother, was not South End that it is today.
No,
at all.
Not. Even 5 years, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Overall, from an industry standpoint, I guess, obviously South End and Plaza Midwood have become their own behemoths.
Yep.
But now starting to see other neighborhoods
yep.
Pop up and kind of create their own identity, which is something we're awesome, or not awesome, but excited to be a part of within this kind of community.
Yeah.
But I also think that the level and the quality of every aspect of the food and bev industry has been elevated.
I think so too.
And it's just an exciting thing to be a part of overall,
yeah.
I think. So.
And so brewing.
Mm-hmm.
So brewing, we all know the last decade maybe? What do you think? What do you think has really popped off? Well, what do you think? Has it been 10, 12 years?
Yeah, so I think, probably what most people know of, the past 10, 15 years, at least within Charlotte, in the Charlotte area.
Yeah.
And nationwide, really, you could really start to see in those early years the shift towards, distribution, the distribution model into more of a taproom focus,
yep.
like neighborhood, a bar almost,
yep.
Focus, and getting more and more hyper local as far as the areas that you're serving. 10 years ago, when we had 3 or 4 handful of breweries, everyone in Charlotte would go to those breweries.
Yeah.
And still to this day, people do that because they have rightfully become a destination
sure.
to go to. And I think it's even more than just people in Charlotte. It's a southeastern, it's a regional thing. Like if you're stopping in Charlotte, you're probably going to go to OMB. You're probably going to go to Triple C, Noda, Birdsong. Some of these, local legends, or our forefathers, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
But then alongside that, go check out some of these newer breweries like us, some of our other neighbors and stuff like that. So
Love it.
depending on what area of Charlotte you're in that day, I guess. So
Now, question, you may or may not know the answer to this, but what do you think led to smaller breweries? Is there anything that you think led to like smaller, localized? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Do you have any context as far as that's concerned? Why that 10, 12 years ago, 15 years ago really popped off? You know, because I know even in the food industry, 10, 12 years ago, things have gotten more local, farm to table support. You know what I mean? I don't know if that.
I think those two go hand in hand for sure. I think that you kind of started to see, you know, what other cities that definitely got a more head start on the industry and the scene and the culture. You kind of saw what they were doing and started to see what those small breweries were doing at that time. And it kind of just obviously kind of rolled into, you know, into Charlotte.
Sure.
I think it was a natural progression for sure.
Gotcha.
So.
I was just curious. I didn't know if there was, you know, I don't know, like support the small business guy. I don't know what maybe led to, you know, I was just curious, but so cool. So have you always thought about starting your own brewery? How did this, you know, obviously we finished college the same year, 2008. We both started working. You know, my dad has restaurants. We were doing that whole thing. I stayed in the industry too. You know, I'm just a vendor.
Yeah.
But what was the back of your mind? You always wanted to own a business, or how did it even start?
Yeah, I mean, you know, owning a business always kind of was in the back of my mind.
Okay.
My dad owned his own business.
Okay, so you saw it.
He was a landscape architect, and he's a practicing landscape architect. Still to this day owns his own business. He's probably been in business for himself for like close to 50 years at this point.
Cool.
And it's always just been him. So it's definitely a different, you know, business model.
Yes.
But you know, just kind of, I guess I could, you know, attribute that to him as well. But you know, graduating with a business background, but going into the food and bev industry, you still look at things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And so, you know, very early on, you know, in my food and bev time, I was like, you know, this might be something I could do.
Yeah.
This might be, you know, whether it's a bar, a restaurant, not at that time was necessarily thinking brewery, but something along those lines was like, I could maybe, you know, own something.
Yeah.
You know, not really at that time knowing how much involvement there is really into it. But
and there's major involvement in starting a business.
Yes, any business.
True. Do you remember when you thought about a brewery? Like, do you remember like year or time frame, or like how was there anything that like triggered like, hey, this sales rep from this other, you know, I don't know, like did anything?
Yeah, you know, like you know, so in my earlier years of becoming a bar manager at the previous place I used to work at, really making those relationships with you know, the then starting out breweries, and getting their products on tap and stuff like that. Really kind of falling in love with that culture and that scene, and you know, that kind of culture and scene, I guess you could also say was limitless, because like I was kind of alluding to it in different cities around, you know, the country, but also just in North Carolina too. Obviously we have Asheville, great beer city, USA, you know, multiple years over. I really think that maybe going to Asheville, I can't remember, obviously when you go to Asheville, you don't remember too much, but probably going to some of those early breweries in Asheville and like really seeing how much the community, you know, gathers around, you know, certain breweries and stuff like that. Probably just kept reinforcing, you know, the idea of like, I should do this, I want to do this. And then, you know, going to the ones that open up here, it's like, oh, well, you can do that here. You can do that, and it doesn't have to be up in the mountains. It doesn't have to be in, you know, Denver or San Francisco or, you know, certain locations. You know, you can do this here. So again, just constant, you know, reinforcements and, you know, little touches here and there.
Yep.
Here we are.
Love it. So give us the framework, the context, the vision of this one? I know you had a previous thought, different business plan, all together. Give us how it all panned out. Because I mean, the reason I ask, Kyle, is there's people right now listening to this that want to start a business. Yeah. They just don't know where to start. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how your college experience was, but it didn't teach me nothing about starting a business. It was just, get good grades, memorize, take a test, get this degree, and then this is just a license, a permit to be able to interview for jobs. Yeah, that's exactly. For me, that's my experience. Yeah. So I didn't. There's a big learning curve that I had to. So how did this pan out for you?
Yeah, I mean, thinking back into my classes in college, I'm pretty sure there was never a class called entrepreneurship. If there was, I didn't take it, but I don't think there was. And I
remember even asking my professors if any of them owned a business. Yeah. None of them. No. My accounting professor said occasionally he would lay tile on the side every once in a while, but that was the closest to anybody. And I don't know. I just, like I said, I was just like, okay, cool. I mean, like maybe now there is, but back when we were in school, we definitely wasn't.
Definitely not. And I mean, you have former CEOs and account managers and stuff like that probably teaching you up, and that's great. And there's a place and time for that. But, to start a business, you really have to have that gumption and drive and passion. Sure. And, I don't claim to have any of those, but, I talk about cliches all the time, and one of those cliches, if you want something bad enough, you'll get it. Yeah. Right? And so I guess along with all that reinforcement, a lot of luck, that kind of got me to where I am today. But, there's all these other, outside factors too. Had I found just a regular marketing job, right out of college, would I be doing this? Probably not. It took years, up to a decade, in the food and bev industry to kind of grow into where I am today, really.
Isn't that so interesting, though? I think about that also. Yeah. If I would have gotten a job, if we graduated at a different time, and I just got a corporate job or a finance job or something, it just fascinates me. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't have a podcast. Maybe I wouldn't own a traditional company. Maybe I don't know. It's just interesting how paths happen.
Yeah, paths for sure. It's definitely, and how those branch off and splinter this way.
It does.
To lead you to where you are today. But yeah.
So 10 years in the making. You're in the food business. You start with a business plan, an idea, right?
Yeah. Back in March of 2015, I said, I'm going to do this, get this rolling. The first brewery that I was trying to open was called Prevalent Pine. It was an ode to North Carolina, the original House bill that adopted the pine tree as North Carolina's state tree. One of the first lines that reads off is, whereas the pine is prevalent in all 7 forms, yada, 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 yada. And so took the pine and prevalent and kind of switched it and said prevalent pine. I, at that time, wanted a very North Carolina focused brewery using only North Carolina ingredients, sourcing North Carolina everything. And I still think we kind of have that spirit today, more of try to source locally, whether that's ingredients or working with other businesses, up and down the street or within Charlotte and stuff like that. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. So, had the business plan, Prevalent Pine, back in March 2015. Tried to get the investors going, couldn't get investors. Also, really didn't know what I was getting into, so really kind of chalk it up as a learning lesson, I'd say.
Which happens.
Which happens and is necessary 100%.
100%.
So, that basically got pushed to the side, got married, bought a house, had our first child. That obviously took precedent. But then, life started smoothing out, and, we started thinking, what do we really want to do, my wife and I, and we started looking at, real estate up in the mountains. I was in the talks with a realtor out in Lake Lure about maybe opening a little bottle and sandwich shop up there. And I was like, well, maybe this is what I want to do, still be kind of within the beer industry itself, but, I know about buying beer. Maybe that's what we're going to do. So probably a week after or so those kind of conversations, my real estate agent that I've been working with down here calls me up, told me who had bought this building after BB&T closed down. This is an old BB&T, by the way.
Okay.
I had looked at some of that landlord's properties in other parts of the city on our first go around, and I live about half a mile away. And I said, jokingly, very jokingly, of course, if anyone's going to build a brewery in my neighborhood, it's got to be me. So one thing kind of led to another, and we got things rolling and signed the lease without one single investor, essentially. I actually had one of my other business partners, Johnie Jones, after multiple business meetings at 10 p.m. at Moosehead, and a few shots of Jameson and a few beers. Got him on board, and the dominoes started to fall. And
love it.
Was able to get the investors, get the right type of investors, because that's actually very important too from an SBA loan standpoint. There is such thing as someone having too much money, apparently.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Sometimes if you have too much money, you can't go in on on certain SBA loans. They want to see wealth, which means assets and stuff like that, not just cash.
Wow.
Because they say if you have that much cash, why don't you just pay for it,
Gotcha.
out of pocket?
Gotcha.
So it was about trying to find a team, essentially, of investors that the SBA would find desirable to lend to.
What was that like? Was that difficult? Was that
very difficult? It came down to literally the 11th hour, where the landlord and group basically said, if you don't find your investors by the end of this week, we got to move on.
Yeah.
So it was either going to be Vaulted Oak or a Popeye's chicken, believe it or not. So glad that we were able to.
It's a Vaulted Oak, yeah.
Yeah, glad it's Vaulted Oak. And hopefully a lot of other folks are too. But yeah, so that kind of gets my butt in gear, and people that I didn't think about asking the first time around, or even during the initial offerings and stuff like that, I reached out to, just threw out as many lines as I possibly could, and got one of our other partners, Chuck Kissler, involved, and he was a good fit. And it was funny, it actually went from three different lenders saying you don't have enough, to three different lenders, the same lenders, putting in an offer to me, and me being able to pick and choose like my interest rate, so I could kind of go back and forth and shop around.
There you go.
So that was a great feeling, really. And
that was when? Like, when did that get finalized? How long ago did that get finalized?
So that was probably late 2019, I'd say.
So right before COVID.
Right before COVID. Yeah, probably in the fall of 2019.
Okay.
I think we signed the lease in September of 2019.
All right. So then you start remodeling. You start like what happens? How does that process look? Because I mean, I'm sure this is the first time you've had have people come in.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I didn't know anything about GCs or anything like that, and
me neither. Yeah.
Yeah, signing the lease in the fall of 2019 to when we technically broke ground July 7th of 2020.
There's a gap.
Large gap.
Yeah.
Where most of that was finalizing all the SBA paperwork and all that stuff, and making, again, like getting the investors and stuff like that, getting the LLC put together, crossing T's, dotting I's and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They make getting an SBA loan hard for a reason, because there's a lot of hoops to jump through. But it is an effective program for sure. For someone like us that, I didn't have a lot of, and I still don't have very much wealth behind my name or my wife's name or anything like that. That's why we had to go the investor route and the SBA route.
Which is why those programs exist.
Exactly.
So people can get a small business loan, right, and make their dreams come true.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Okay, so paperwork, 8-10 months, you're learning LLCs, you're figuring that out. You're starting to think about how to, what it's going to look like, how are we going to turn this bank into a brewery.
Exactly. Again, everything, from the architects, picking out a GC and all that stuff.
What did you learn from all that? Like that whole experience, picking out a GC, the construction process, any suggestions, tips to anybody that is buying a building that needs renovation that maybe, was not previously what it was intended for?
Specifically off the top of my head, the great and the good architects, they cost an eye-opening amount of money, but for a good reason. If you go with sometimes the less expensive route, they're not hidden, but we went with an architect that she is a great architect, but that's all she does. There are other architect firms out there that have in-house civil, mechanical, plumbing engineers in their umbrella.
All in one kind of.
And that's why it costs so much, interior design as well.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
If you go the route I did, your architectural fee will be less, but then at the same time, you're going to be paying, separately for a mechanical engineer, civil engineer, all these other engineers, all these other fees, and they add up. And
I didn't think about that. Actually.
And that's something. It's just a hard lesson that when you're doing something like this, you're going to learn. If we do a second thing or
location,
we do
business,
something else,
whatever.
Learn that lesson the hard way. So, a good architect is money well spent. Same thing with the GC for sure. Someone reputable. I'd always heard pick a GC that's done breweries before. Because there's a reason to that. It's still, breweries are still relatively a new industry to other industries.
That makes sense.
So, a lot of GCs will look at it as a restaurant when it's not. It's it is a bar, but it's also industrial. There's a lot of different games being played within one location. So, from brewery specific, that it's important to have experience behind you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So you break ground right in the middle of COVID, July. Anything you learned there or any setbacks, material costs? I mean, was that all in the middle of this?
Material costs were not as big of an issue for us, but the lead times for everything definitely were extended. So for instance, all that shiny metal stainless steel back there, typically will take 4 to 6 months anyway. Just from having to come overseas, then getting manufactured in the United States, and then shipped to you, and then putting it in. It takes a really long time. Factor in a global pandemic and material costs along with labor shortages and stuff like that.
Now it's like 8, 10, 12 months instead of 4 to 6 months.
Those were definitely lessons learned on top of it, but at the same time, it's just just put it onto the pile. Just more things learned. But
nice. Okay. So then you guys open up. What, June of 2021? You just opened up?
Yeah, opened up June 8th of 2021.
Cool.
Looks like I'm getting a delivery.
Nice. So what? It's all good. So what did you learn from that? Like the
overwhelming and humbling were a lot of the phrases that I'd used a lot of times.
Okay.
And it was definitely that. We didn't expect the amount of support, it's the middle of summer and still a pandemic.
Yeah.
We didn't expect that level of support. And again, it was super humbling, but definitely overwhelming. And at that point, it all kind of comes back to you as far as, working at a bar or restaurant, stuff like that, all the small things like, well, you gotta make sure you have enough change. You gotta make sure you have this. You gotta have that.
All the
make sure
random
all the credit card
stuff
stuff works. Yeah. You have enough, toilet paper. You know what I mean? So
we can help you with that one. So, but
yeah.
But man, it's a lot of the details that you have to figure out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, what are you most looking forward to as far as Vaulted Oak, the business, the brewery, the community you want to build? I don't know. Any thoughts into where you would like to see this moving towards, the direction? I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
100%. Yeah, because community was always a pillar of our business model. Whether it was with Prevalent Pine 5-6 years ago at this point, or when we opened this place, we wanted to be more than just a place to get a beer, more than just like I said, a bar or something like that. I kind of have always said that I want this place to be like a community gathering space. We serve so many different neighborhoods, whether it's Echo Hills, whether it's Elizabeth, whether it's Greer Heights, whether it's Oakhurst or Cotswold. There is a huge swing of demographics from all those different neighborhoods, and we knew that kind of going into it.
Yep.
So, and I also say, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not the first ones to be doing this, but, bringing in different events, whether it's trivia or live musicians, a lot of them live around,
Here,
one of these neighborhoods.
Yeah.
They've reached out to us and say, hey, I live around the corner, love to be a part of, some live music or something like that.
Yeah.
Working with the small businesses on this corridor right here on Monroe Road. Monroe Road has a lot of small businesses.
It does, actually.
Here, and that's great. Like Sal's Pizza, right across the street, some of the greatest pizza in Charlotte. They'll deliver it right to your table. We've
here,
we have a little table tent system. We have plenty of their menus. You call it in, they ask, "What's your table tent?" and you tell them it's usually like red rhombus or round rectangle, but and they'll deliver it right over here. So it helps them, helps us. We don't have a kitchen here. Sweet Spot Studios right down the road, the little 2 or 3 woman operation. They're killing it. They do like different cooking classes and stuff like that. They're booked out till October essentially.
Nice.
Trying to get them on the books. Just trying to work with collaborate a lot with the small businesses. When we were in the middle of construction, our sign, which was the old BB&T sign, well, we had RP signs right down the street. They fabricated that sign for us. Light Bulbs Plus came with all the light bulbs that you see here. Common Market obviously down the road. Great place to get a beer after a long days of work and planning. Just really trying to work with a lot of local businesses here, like Reed's right here, Kirkland AC. Like, we have great neighbors. Everyone's so neighborly on the street, and why not utilize that?
Yeah.
So I say all that just because, as far as looking forward to what we want to do, we want to help kind of grow. I guess grow is the right word, but just kind of help everyone on this East Charlotte side or in this neighborhood of Oakhurst and Echo Hills. Succeed, I guess.
That's awesome.
So if we can be a part of that, then I think comes full circle. So,
I love that. I love that. Cool. Let's do maybe some parting thoughts. Let's do last thoughts on suggestions to anybody that wants to be either an intrapreneur, where they help a business owner, entrepreneur within an organization already, whether it's an entrepreneur, solopreneur. What are some tips now that you got almost 2 years under your belt? right? Next month, September, will be 2 years since you signed the lease.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that? On finding the right team, hiring, finding out good collaborations within the street, vendors that are going to supply. I mean, what are some things, tips, suggestions to anybody that wants to start a dry cleaners, a landscape company, a roofing company? Doesn't matter. Wants to start selling brownies baked from their home, direct to consumer, online through a website. What are some thoughts?
First thoughts: never burn bridges, because you never know when someone, you're gonna need someone's relationship or someone else's that they know's relationship.
Sure.
You never want to burn bridges.
Yep.
Fail often, so you learn from your failures.
And fail is not a bad thing.
No, it's a great thing.
I think, I want to say I read in a book a long time ago that the opposite of success is not failing.
Right.
It's quitting.
Yeah.
Because you will fail many times.
Yeah.
And it's, as long as it's not disastrous and puts you out, you will have many, many roadblocks, bumps. Man, that didn't work. We wasted money on that event.
Yeah.
That marketing company, whatever. So I love that. I love that.
Fail often, learn from your failures, and don't be afraid to ask for help. That was one thing too that really drew me to the local craft brewing community. Is it always seemed like it's a very not fierce, but there are a lot of competitors within this market, but I don't think any of us consider each other competitors. A rising tide, raises all ships, kind of thing, I think. And there's always someone that's gone similarly what you've been through, that's done it right before you, and there's going to be someone right after you, and
pay it forward.
You got to pay it forward, because without luck and hard work, but also the help of others, within this industry, we definitely wouldn't have been here. So those
I love that.
Probably be mine. I could probably go on. And
sure. There's endless lessons, success principles that we can name off.
And cliches are they're there for a reason. They really are. So I hate saying that, but
no, it's true, man. It's true. I love that. You're definitely humble, but this doesn't come about without somebody spearheading it. And so congratulations to you, Kyle, and the team. Your partners, the staff, everybody. If you have not been here to Vaulted Oak, man, you gotta come. Awesome place. We took a little tour earlier, checked it out. Love the building, love the concept, love the feel, love the people. Now getting to know Kyle, and so stop by, check them out. They can find you guys. Where? On what social platforms do you guys have?
Facebook, just look at Vaulted Oak Brewing.
Okay.
Instagram's probably one of our most active platforms.
Cool.
Website is coming.
Yep.
Just another thing to add to my checklist or finalize, but vaultedoakbrewing.com will be the website. And our address is 3726 Monroe Road.
Perfect. Stop by and see these guys. Good to see you. Episode 14 in the books of season 2 of the Paper Trails podcast. Share, like, subscribe, do everything. You guys know what to do. Appreciate you guys stopping by, and we'll see you in the next episode.
The restaurants you love, the food you crave, and the people that make it all happen. We tell their stories on the Paper Trails podcast with Albemarle Paper Supply.